Hey, good people. Welcome to Melanated Vibrations, a new show that celebrates the diversity and richness of Black culture. Join us as we delve into our individual mental health and overall mental health of our community. From the latest trends to the timeless coping mechanisms, we'll showcase the best of what it means to be mentally healthy. So sit back, relax, and get ready to feel the vibrations of Black excellence. Let's get started.
Of course, you guys couldn't hear anything I was saying. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to Melanated Vibrations. Happy Monday. Thank you all for who is here, who has joined. Before we get started, let's get to our grounding technique. Today has been a very long day for a lot of us. We're coming off of a weekend. And so we may have had some meetings today. The kids is acting crazy, spouse is acting crazy. And so before we get started, I do want to do a grounding technique. I want us to center ourselves so that, we can make sure that, again, not only are we physically here, but that we are mentally, emotionally present. So this grounding technique, which I'm sure many of you have heard, it is called the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. So we're going to get started with that. You can do it standing up, preferably sitting down. You want to make sure that your feet are planted. Again, we are going to start with our feet because that's where everything happens. We can't walk, we can't run, we can't do anything unless we're grounded with our feet. And so we're going to, hands can kind of just be wherever you want them to be. They can be, your palms can be turned up. You're going to place them on your lap. And we're going to get started. And so first we're going to get started with our feet. We're going to wiggle our toes, move our toes around, make sure you can feel your feet moving. Then we're going to move our legs as you start to work your way up your body. We are going to take those same hands that we have and we're going to kind of just rub our thighs, rub our legs, kind of just get all the blood flowing and just kind of move those. And then we're going to take some deep breaths. So we're going to breathe in and breathe out about 3 times, and then we'll get started. So you can have your eyes open or you can have your eyes closed for this exercise. So let's get started. So we are going to breathe in. We're going to hold it for 2. We are going to let out, and we're going to do that for 2. So let's get started. So breathe in. 1, 2, hold it. 1, 2, breathe out. 1, 2. Again, breathe in. 1, 2, hold it. 1, 2, breathe out. 1, 2. Last time, breathe in. 1, 2, hold it. 1, 2, breathe out. 1, 2. We're going to open our eyes. So as we do this grounding technique, the first thing we are going to do is we're going to focus on 5 things we can see. So wherever you are, please be somewhere safe doing this. You are going to name 5 things you can see. You can do it in the chat. You can say it out loud, however you want to do it. The purpose of this exercise is so that you are present in the moment, so you are aware of the things that are going on and that are happening for you right here. Not what happened earlier today, not what happened 5 minutes before the show started, but what's currently happening. So you're going to look around and look at 5 things. So my 5 things is a water bottle, my phone, my mirror, my ring light, and my fan, my remote control to my fan. You're then going to focus on, hey, Jacinta, you're going to focus on 4 things you can touch. Hello, everyone. 4 things you can touch. I can touch my hair. I can touch my nose. I can touch my pants I have on. And I can touch my laptop. So those are 4 things that you can focus on touching. You're then going to focus on 3 things you can hear. Now, initially, depending on where you are, you're going to hear what's immediately, you may hear my voice, you may hear the doorbell ring, but I want you to really focus on the things you can hear, things that may not be very apparent. Listen if you can hear the wind blowing, or I don't know, if you just, someone flushed the toilet in your house, can you hear the toilet running? So you're going to focus on 3 things that you can hear. So right now I can hear my son's TV. I can hear myself talking, and I actually can hear a plane going past my house. We're then going to move to 2 things that we can smell. So 2 things you can smell. So that's why when we did the first exercise with our breathing in, breathing out, taking in all of the things that are around us. So right now I smell my air diffuser. I have lavender essential oils in there. And I have, let's see what else I can smell. I also was burning a candle earlier, a pear cactus candle. So those are the 2 things that I can smell. So you're going to think about the things that you can smell that are close to you. And then we're going to focus on the last thing. You're going to focus on 1 thing that you can taste. For me, I can taste some barbecue chips that I had. That is the thing that I can taste the most. And so once you've come down from this exercise, again, the exercise is to help ground you, is to help you stay focused on the here and the now, to be present in the moment. And so once you are able to focus on those things, then you can kind of come down off of whatever it is that you are experiencing. Now, as always, we are going to set, hey, J Boogie, we are going to set our intentions. So I want everyone to put in the chat what you are bringing in to this space. Today, I am setting my intention. I am bringing into this space gratefulness. I am very grateful. I have a lot of great things going on. I'll keep you guys posted. I don't want to jinx it, but I am grateful. I am very, 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 very grateful for all of the things. And so I want to hear, what is it that you guys are grateful for today? Or what is your intention? What are you bringing into this space? I'm bringing gratefulness. What are you guys bringing into this space today? Focus. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good one, Mimi. Okay. And so happy Black History Month. I want to, hey sis, yes, hope. Hope is a good one. So for Black history, appreciation of life, absolutely. We have to be grateful for the life that we have, no matter what circumstances. An open mind, absolutely. I love that. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. I can wait a couple seconds before we do our Black History fun facts. Okay. And that's okay, first, last. That is okay. I hope that by the end of this podcast, that we can help decrease or eliminate some of those negative emotions that you're feeling. You will be okay, but it's okay not to be okay right now and in this moment. It's absolutely okay not to be okay. Every day is not going to be a good day. It's just what you decide to do with that day. So thank you for being transparent and putting that in the comments. I appreciate that. Peace. Hey Q. Yes, peace. All right. So let's get started on our Black History fun fact. So my person of today, and backstage is going to put a picture of Mimi if you don't mind, is Charlemagne the God. Charlemagne the God is very, very vocal about his mental health in more recent years. Outside of his mainstay gig on The Breakfast Club, where many of you have seen him, Charlemagne the God, whose real name is Leonard McClevey, is making it his mission to encourage Black folks to seek therapy. While promoting his latest book, Shook Ones, Anxiety Playing Tricks on Me, Charlemagne told The Hill that he understands why seeking help is so taboo in the Black community. It's hard to get help when you're still in the middle of the hurt, he says. If you're still in the hood, if you're still in these bad situations, it's hard to see yourself on the outside. Charlemagne, who has been diagnosed with anxiety and depression, also understands how important it is for him to use his platform to share his own story. He says, "You can't heal what you don't reveal." And I think that's a great phrase, right? If you don't reveal it, you don't talk about it, how can you heal from it? He says, "I would be very disingenuous if I had a conversation with individuals about things that they went through and I wasn't expressing things that I went through." He goes on to say, you think you're going for like one or two things like anxiety and depression, but then you start peeling back all of these layers of your life and you start unpacking all of this unhealed trauma that you never knew you had. He said he went through a decade of unlearning, and it's like everything I was taught I knew was a lie. Everything that had gotten me to a certain point didn't. So I chose Charlemagne the God again because he's a really, really big person, really big on mental health. Last week we talked about Taraji. And every week we are going to talk about Black celebrities, people that have been very upfront about their mental health and mental illness to show that we as regular normal people are not alone, that they go through it too. No matter how much money, how much status someone has, they too can experience mental illness. And so that is my hey Hannibal, that is my celebrity for this week for Black mental health. I want to introduce our special guest. Today we are going to talk trauma. So let me tell you this now. There may be some trigger warning, so I am giving you guys this, warning now. If it becomes too much for you guys or for anyone in the audience, please feel free to listen. Take yourself off the podcast, listen to it at a later date. I'm not forcing anyone to stay because trauma can be very triggering. And so before I bring my guests on, I just want to give, a little introduction on who my guest is. So my special guest, her name is Dana Hutchins. Dana and I graduated together from Eastern University in 2021. She has her undergraduate degree in early childhood education, as well as her master's degree in counseling psychology with a concentration in trauma. She is a licensed minister. Dana is the owner and director of Divine Light Academic Preschool. She is a school counselor for grades 5th through 8th at Blueford Charter School. She is a mother of 3 beautiful children and loves to travel. Dana has coined the statement, "I am your hope dealer, trauma healer, supporting those who are ready to turn their trauma into triumph." I think that is very, very big. So let's get into it. Let's talk trauma. So we're going to bring Dana in and we're going to get started.
Hey.
Hey now, how are you?
Good. I had to change. I had to change environments.
Okay.
A lot going on. I think I'm a little traumatized about the
This is why we
current
start with our
events.
grounding techniques. This is why we gotta start with them grounding techniques.
Girl.
It'd be a lot. It'd be a lot.
It definitely be a lot, but we can't help other people if we can't even help ourselves.
That part. That
So
part.
thinking not strange that we get challenged in some things. And it's like, okay, you went to school for this. You got
Mm-hmm.
$110,000 in student loan debt.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So use what you got to get what you need. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of what I tell a lot of people, I now have to use for
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
So
Didn't
yeah.
understand how important self-care was and burnout and all of that. And now we in it and we like, woo! It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It definitely is a lot, especially when you're getting hit with things that you didn't think was ever going to be an issue
Mm-hmm.
or be an issue for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then while you're helping other people, right? So
Mm-hmm.
a transparent moment. Today I got the findings of an assessment for an IEP for my son.
Mm.
And then on Friday, I had to go to not support court, custody court.
Mm.
So that was a whole ordeal in and of itself. And then
Yeah.
today, my son gets sent home from school.
Yeah.
So it's a lot, but I have to remember what I share with other people.
Mm-hmm.
It don't only work for them, it worked for me too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can't just give out suggestions or try to help clients. We got to learn to start applying some of this stuff to our life. I always tell my clients, like, that phrase in the Bible where it says, our cup runneth over, right? What's in the cup belongs to me. Everything else that runs over, y'all can have. But what you can't have is what's in my cup. I'm going to keep this for me. And I'm learning that more and more and more. We both wear many hats, to say the least. We
Mhm.
cannot give people what runs over and what's in the cup, and now we're looking at the cup half full. No.
And
You can have
it's
what runneth over, but everything in this cup, this belongs to me. I'm going to keep that. You
it
can't
is
have.
so funny that you use that analogy because I'm supposed to be in class and
Mm-hmm.
my son was having meltdowns
Yeah.
this evening,
Mm-hmm.
and my teacher told me, she said specifically, she said, fill your cup.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so crazy that you said that, but
And
that
it
is what
is
she
a
texted me.
confirmation, right?
She did. She said, fill your cup.
Mm-hmm. Trust me, listen, you know the stories of my kid. You trust me when I tell you, I understand. We've
It
had a
was
lot of conversations in grad school. So definitely understand. So we're gonna get started. We're gonna talk about trauma. We're gonna clear up some definitions. But you are the trauma expert. We both have a concentration in trauma, but I just love your perspective on it. So we're gonna get started. All right. So what is trauma? Trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience, or it can be caused by a physical injury. There are three main types of trauma. You have acute trauma, which results from a single incident. You have chronic trauma, which is repeated and prolonged, such as domestic violence or abuse. And then you have complex trauma, which is exposure to varied and multiple traumatic events, often of an invasive and impersonal nature. So, with complex trauma, I know a lot of it can start within the childhood setting. So, when we talk about early childhood trauma generally refers to the traumatic experiences that occurs to children from the ages 0 to 6. Children can experience various types of trauma, including natural disasters, sexual abuse, physical abuse, domestic violence, medical injuries, illness, or procedure that went wrong, community violence, neglect, deprivation, traumatic grief, victim of a crime, kidnapping, any accident, school violence, or loss. So, Dana, you have experience with this. You're a school counselor. I'm
Mm.
sure you see this a lot. I'm sure even prior to this, with you being a minister, with you having a preschool, talk to us about like kind of like childhood trauma and the impact that it has, as we get older and we don't deal with it.
So because my undergrad, of course, is in ECE, early childhood education. I saw that aspect of it, right? And then being a minister, I was over the youth for like 4 years. And so I caught them in their teenage, adolescence years. And then when we graduated, I went to drug and alcohol. So then I saw
Mhm.
the older men and how it affects it. And now coming backwards and working in the school. And we had this conversation earlier.
Mhm.
Honestly, my favorite is the drug and alcohol,
Mhm.
but the effects of the trauma when they are younger is what sets the stage for
Mhm.
where they end up
Mhm.
through their adolescent years and
Mhm.
then as they get older into young adult years.
Mhm.
Um so I've seen the whole spectrum.
Mhm.
Um I believe that I'm most effective when they're older
Mhm.
because my thing is kids only have one responsibility, and that's to be a kid.
Mhm.
They don't know how to self-regulate. They should not have to self-regulate.
Mhm.
But um the childhood trauma that you're talking about is called child traumatic stress.
Mhm.
However, a lot of children who experience child traumatic stress don't end up with PTSD
Mhm.
unless it becomes acute or complex like you described. It's
Mhm.
in that acute and that complex stage that complicates things in the life of the person who has experienced the trauma.
Mhm.
So I think this whole COVID thing
Mhm.
was the worst thing that could have ever happened,
Mhm. Yep.
especially those babies that were born in COVID and who
Mhm.
were raised in COVID
Mhm.
because they don't have social emotional skills.
Mhm.
Social emotional skills allow you to be able to coincide with other beings
Mhm.
the way you should.
Mhm.
And because they were isolated, the
We don't know
isolation,
how to coexist.
they
Yeah.
don't know how to coexist.
Yeah.
Now that they're forced to go back into the building, to
Mhm.
be in school, to go from being at home for those 2 years, now you're going into preschool. They don't know how to respond to their peers.
Mhm.
That sets a platform for a disaster.
Absolutely.
And if it is not taken care of or treated properly,
Mhm.
that social emotional deficit is going to grow with the individual.
And then we
Um,
wonder why people have bad interpersonal relationships or skills because they don't know how to relationship with others.
absolutely.
Mhm.
So I hate COVID for that.
Mhm.
But something else, the isolation in and of itself.
Mhm.
Isolation leaves individuals with their own thoughts, right?
Idle mind is a devil's playground, they say, right?
And and so with them being left with their own, that's deprivation.
Mhm.
Deprivation on any level
Mhm.
is not
Right.
good.
Right.
And
And then
so
what about the abuse? Think about it. These kids during COVID were home with their abusers. Not even just
and
kids. We're not going, but we're specifically talking about kids right now. But
people,
people
no,
were left home with
people
their abusers during
locked
COVID.
locked in and quarantined. So people were like, the kids, they get to stay home, and school was a safe haven for those kids. And
Mhm.
one of the things, because my traumatic past is sexual assault,
Mhm.
I said, how many babies are locked in and quarantined with their perpetrators?
Right. Right. Being
That
neglected, deprivation, being abused, not eating, not even having adequate just basic survival things, food, water, electric, like kids, they serve breakfast at school, right?
Because they came to school for the
They came to
exactly.
school to get their daily meal. And now you're telling them they have to stay home with maybe a parent that still unfortunately had to go to work. So now they're home with those siblings. Siblings can be rough. Sometimes you grow up in a household thing. I ain't grow up in a household with siblings. I got siblings, but I ain't grow up in a household with them. But fighting or,
Mistreatment. Because those kids have their own issues. She had another baby and now she leaving them home with me. So now they're treating the kid a certain way, and when they come to school they exhibit those behaviors. So that is a very scary thought to have to ponder on, but it is very real for a lot of people.
I want to go to some of the comments. I can't see any of them.
No, I can't see them either. I thought they were gonna.
Hey, Shannon, we're gonna wrap after this. But yeah, I just want to get to some of the comments to see what kind of people are saying. It's something that maybe they've noticed. For those in the field, those that are in the mental health, behavioral health, school, social work, whatever, like, what's been y'all experience? Like, it's insane. I can't tell you the influx of like clients that I end up getting. And a lot of them were of like that child, teenage. And like, I have 4 clients right now that's my son's age. And I'm like, oh my God. And it's a lot, because it's like you have to break this stuff down to these kids, but you also have to build that therapeutic alliance of getting these children to trust you, to even want to share what they've experienced or what they're witnessing at home. And then so these children then grow up to be adults like us. And I'm sure
with learned behavior.
Learned behavior. You see what Charlemagne the God said, right? He had to unlearn everything he thought he knew. He knew nothing. And so look at us now as adults, right? I'm sure everyone has had some type of traumatic event or traumatic experience with something. And we hold on to that trauma. I remember one of the books we had in grad school, The Body Keeps Score.
My favorite book.
It talks about trauma, right? It talks
Viktor
about
Frankl, yes.
About what happens in your body, all the traumatic
muscle
things
memory.
you've been through, like your muscle memory, the things you remember, those triggers, being or witnessing. It just even the vicarious trauma, right? We learned that. Where if it's not really happening directly to you, but you're witnessing it, it can be a trigger for you. And so, maybe growing up in a household where there unfortunately was domestic violence, and then you grow up and then your interpersonal relationships, you think that that's okay.
Learned behavior.
Or you become the abuser, or you become the victim. It's things that you've seen from whatever your household situation was. You grow up and now, unfortunately, you learn on the back end that this is not right, but here we are. And so, being, all the violence in the city, being a victim of crime. Like, I remember as a child, I lost my brother, my mother's son, too. Unfortunately, he was a victim of crime. He was gunned down at the age of 16. I think I was like 4 or 5. My mom did not let me go to his funeral. She was like, I can't do it. I can't let you see that. I'm going to be honest. I was kind of glad. I don't want to see anybody in the casket. But what always stuck with me is not so much of like how he died, because it was very unfortunate. The guy went to jail, but then he appealed it like years later. And unfortunately, the witness at the time, she was like 90 something. So, the prosecutor had fun with that and was like, oh, you're lying. Or she's 90 something and she doesn't remember something that happened from 40, 50 years ago. But what stuck with me the most out of that was right before my brother left the house, we were laying on a couch taking a nap. And I remember him getting a call. He gets up and he gives me a kiss on the forehead. I'm like half asleep. And I'm like, can you bring me back a cherry water ice? That's all I remember saying to him. And I never saw my brother again. He never walked back through that door. And so for me, like, that was very traumatic for a lot of years, because it's just like, so when you say bye to people, they just don't come back. Like, in my mind, I was like, my parents are going to leave and they're just not going to come back. Like, something bad is going to happen. And even as an adult, and unfortunately,
I
with
was want to say, how did that transfer over to your relationships?
it's being afraid, the anxiety level of like being raised in this city with so
Mhm.
much crime and raising a son, dating black men, like and this was like dating people that were in the streets, like even having those relationships, right? When we're in our 20s, we're in our teens, we date, we date the bad boys,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, it's a chance that you're not gonna come home. You're gonna get gunned down. Like, and in my mind, I'm thinking that like this could happen to you.
Mhm.
And now I'm raising a son. Unfortunately, that is on my mind. Like, I'm going to send you out this house, and God forbid, growing up, like having that stick with me as an adult is very scary. And then unfortunately, it doesn't change because the crime rate is still what it is. We are still losing black and brown people at an all-time rate. We are killing each other.
Can we talk about that?
We are our own genocide.
Can we really talk about that though?
Can we really get into that though? We are our own genocide. We worried about everybody else killing us. Oh, Black Lives Matter. Does it really matter? Or does it only matter when it's the cops killing us? We killing each other. We are our own genocide. We are wiping each other out.
Let's take a moment to break that down, right?
Mm-hmm.
The children that are out here doing these killings, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're between the ages of 12 and 17.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They would technically be the grandchildren
Mm-hmm.
or the great grandchildren
Mm-hmm.
of the crack generation.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So how I don't want to label it how the city did it or how the government did it, because that's a whole nother conspiracy theory in and of itself.
Listen, that's a whole nother podcast.
But how they infiltrated our city
Mm-hmm.
with crack cocaine and took our men out of the homes.
Mm-hmm. Put them in jail instead of putting them in rehab.
They wasn't good enough for heroin spots.
But now suddenly y'all want to put safe injection sites.
Exactly.
Y'all want us to care about the opioid epidemic for when it comes to the non-melanated folks, but when it was breaking up our households.
Exactly. And so then it took the mothers.
Mm-hmm.
It took the mothers out because they were with the men who were either selling it or using it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So then it left for their young children to be left with the very individuals who traumatized the mother or the father.
Mm-hmm.
Because in order, she said, it's not conspiracy, it's facts. I'm trying to be.
We trying to be, we were trying to be politically correct. You're right, Shannon. It's absolutely not a conspiracy. It definitely is a fact.
It is facts. Absolutely. It is facts. I was trying to be politically correct. But if you look at it, if those individuals had laid a foundation and a platform for their children, going out to sell drugs would not have been an option. Higher standards would have been an option for some of their daughters, as opposed to choosing a person who stood on street corners and sold crack cocaine. So now that the mother and the father are taken out of the home, who are the children left with? The same individual who did not raise the mother or the father properly. So now they're being introduced to the same trauma that their mother and father had. But now there's less social emotional accompaniment. So now,
and unfortunately, it's that stigma of what happens in this household stays in this household. That's been perpetuated in the Black household for so long.
Yes.
We don't talk about what happens here.
Yes.
We just act like it doesn't happen.
And so while that may have missed mom and dad, while it may have missed the kids, mom and dad might have continued that. But the children could have come up in a way where they've gotten away from it, like the now generation, because they sound an alarm. They tell it on everything.
Right.
But now that generation is now subjected to the same trauma that their mothers and fathers and aunties and uncles were subjected to.
It just ain't crack no more. Is weed and pills and
yes, and so
and the drug didn't change, but it's still the same.
And so with that particular child growing up, they are now probably the grandparents of the individuals that are out here running around.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be great because you know that from then, that was what, the 80s?
Mm-hmm.
Generation used to be 20. A generation is now 13, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was our era back then. Mm-hmm.
So the rapid refire of birth was a little bit quicker than our generation. So these could be the great grandchildren of that crack generation. They had no morals, no integrity, no standards, no education, no love, no social emotional support, no anything. So what we're seeing on the streets of Philadelphia right now is generations of trauma that have been perpetuated since crack cocaine.
And it's funny that you say that, because one of the points I wanted to get to was about intergenerational trauma and how it has an impact on the Black community. You also mentioned brain development. So trauma and the brain development. So it says research has shown that children are particularly vulnerable to trauma because of their rapid developing brain. So their brain is continuing to grow. We know that the part of the brain that's responsible for logic and reasoning does not fully develop in women until 25 and men until 30.
Yep.
During traumatic experiences, a child's brain is in heightened state of stress, and fear-related hormones are activated. Although stress is a normal part of life, when a child is exposed to chronic trauma like abuse or neglect, the child's brain remains in this heightened pattern. Remaining in this heightened state can change the emotional, behavioral, and cognitive functioning of the child in order to maintain and promote survival. Over time, these traumatic experiences can have a significant impact on a child's future behavior, emotional development, mental and physical health. This is exactly what you just said.
ACEs.
Traumatic experiences, that heightened pattern, going through some form of trauma and then having this heightened pattern. So now you're always in survival mode.
So you don't make good choices. You're impulsive.
You make decisions for you to survive today, this moment, this second. Specifically in the Black community, because that's all I'm concerned with. Let me just be real. I'm concerned with the melanated people, hence the name Melanated Vibrations, right? Us particularly, as a Black culture, as a community, we are always in survival mode. From the day we are born, when we go out the house, kindergarten, preschool, we are always in survival mode. If you don't believe me, think about when you was 5 and you went to school and they picked on you and they bullied you. You either was going to keep allowing them to pick on you and bully you, or you was going to fight back. Survival mode. Having siblings, fighting with your siblings. Either you was going to keep getting beat up or you was going to learn to fight back. Survival mode. We become teenagers. Young men, unfortunately, go out and decide to be on the corners. And I'm not going to knock anybody if that is what you choose to do, because let's be clear, the way this rate of pay, the way this minimum wage is set up, you telling me I can go stand on the corner and make $500 for a couple hours, but if I go into this McDonald's for $7.25, I'm going to make $120 for today. And then once Uncle Sam take his taxes out, I'm going to bring home $60, $70. So I get it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. Whatever. That's between you and your God that you serve, or the lack thereof, matters none to me. But what I'm saying is you are always in survival mode. That's just the reality of it. We're always in survival mode. We're always thinking we got to keep a roof over our head. We got to make sure we have our next meal. We have to be able to provide clothes and shelter to our kids, to our families. The Black household and Hispanic household are the only two races that, when it comes to allowing people to live with you, live with us, we do it. Right. We're always trying to survive. When it comes to that is one thing about Black folks. We ain't going to see you out on the street. Now, we might talk shit about you, okay? All right, how long are you gonna be on my couch? But one thing about us as a Black culture, when it comes to survival, that is one thing we know how to do because we've always been pressed against the mark of having to survive. When the stock market crashed, you ain't see none of us jumping off no damn buildings because we know how to survive. It's unfortunate that traumatic experiences has put us in a heightened state, but we're always ready to survive something. It's a survival just to get in your car.
Did you hear what you just said? We're always in survival in order to survive something.
It don't matter what it is.
But that's also a state of mind because that says something's always going to come up. But I challenge you to ask yourself, is it?
Is it? Or are you holding on to things that have happened?
And holding on to that learned behavior, right? Well, what do they call it? Hoping for the best.
Hoping for the best, wishing for the worst, praying for the best, and wishing for the worst.
Yeah, exactly. But that's still a mindset that comes along with trauma. Because when you're free, you take things as they come and you don't look for the hard thing to come. You just take them as they come and you deal with it. But when it becomes overwhelming when you haven't done with the old stuff. So I heard you say earlier that Charlemagne said you have to deal in order to heal. Right? So one of the things that I've coined, but I think you was in class when Dr. Walters said it. And I think I changed it a little bit to what he said. And I always say this, but you can't confront what you're not willing to confess. Right? And so it takes someone to get to a certain point in vulnerability to even be able to say that I'll always pray for the best, but or hope for the worst. Or however the slogan goes. I don't even know it. I don't even want to learn it because it's not something that I want to think. But there are individuals who genuinely think like that because their mindset is linked to trauma.
The glass is always half full with some people. And let's be clear.
We're always half empty.
Or half empty, should I say. And let's be clear. We're not criticizing anybody for that way of thinking because at one point we were those people. But the point of this podcast and to bring clinicians on here is to try to teach others of how to not look at the glass half empty, but to look at the glass half full. To understand that, yes, life is going to happen. Life is going to come with stressors.
Life gone
but
life.
Let's not anticipate. It's called life, right? But let's not anticipate.
There you go.
Let's not anticipate or feel like we need to be in survival mode all the time or that something happens, so it triggers something else. No. What is that about? What is it that we're not addressing? What are we not talking about? What are we not confessing? What are we not confronting? We hold on to all of these things that have occurred in our lives, all these events, traumatic or not. We hold on to these things. And as you said, it's a learned behavior. So we think because this is how we learned something, that this is how we must carry on life. This is not how it should always be. I know for a really long time, like I said, with gun violence in the city, unfortunately losing my brother, like it would just make me so tense. I want people to like really understand, like when you are triggered or a traumatic event has happened and you have not dealt with it, pay attention to what we learned in school is the somatic work, your soma. What happens to your body? Do you tighten up? Do you feel your muscles contracting?
Do you feel your heart racing?
Do you feel your heart palpitations? Do you feel you sweating? Do you feel that fight or flight? Because those are trauma responses. Fight, flight, fawn, freeze, flop. And literally there are people that will do each one of those. I know for sure my trauma response, I'm a fighter. Baby, it's going to be a battle on your hands. But you have those that will freeze. You have those that will literally flop on the floor, just drop in the middle of a situation. They'll fawn like a deer. They'll go away. those are trauma responses. So when we use the term or fight or flight, that's your trauma response. What are you going to do in this situation? Maybe try doing something different. Let's not even think about a trauma response. Let's try to do freeze. Right, Ness. A freezer. Like some people really just.
So it depends on the situation or how I was triggered. Because I'm like you, I'm a fighter. But then depending on what triggered me,
yeah.
She said my brain be processing.
Freeze and flop, definitely. Yeah.
It depends on what triggered me. I may just freeze. So it just depends on what specific thing triggered me. But the other thing that you said about the trauma responses is, let's go back to what Dr. Walters had talked about when he said our core schemas. Our core schemas, the environment that we grew up in, right? Shaped and molded our conception of things. How we see things based upon how we were treated social emotionally as a child. And so that factor determines the type of choices and decisions that we make throughout life as an adult.
Absolutely.
So if anybody wants to know why they click, why they tick the way they do, the same way Charlemagne said it, the same way I said it, in order to heal, you got to deal. You must, if you don't confess it, how can you address it? You have to go back to what were you taught? Because like Charlemagne said, there are so many things that you have to unlearn.
And why do you respond this way? Do you even know why you respond this way? That's part of the schema.
That's part of why I said the core schema. The core schema is why you respond the way that you do. But in order to fix it or to restructure it, if you will, you have to go and deal with it. You have to talk about it. You have to express your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions behind what was done to you so that you can grasp the concept of, oh, when this happened, it made me feel this. And that means I really didn't have to do that. So when you change that, it then changes your perspective, but it also makes you change how you now address and deal with things in your life. Unlearn the behavior. So one thing I know about my mother's generation is they buried their head to everything. That goes back to what happens in this house stays in this house. Speak when you're spoken to. But I need to say what's hurting me. You may never ask me what's hurting me. So I need to tell you what's hurting me. So I can't wait for you to speak to me before I can speak.
Right.
So it's unlearning a lot of things, but you have to go back to those core schemas and get those right. Those things that shape you, that make you think the way that you think based upon what happened to you back then. Gotta go back and address it.
You gotta go back to where it all started. That's why when you go to therapy, right? When they ask you those questions like, tell me about your childhood, tell me about your upbringing, tell me about your parents, tell me about the relationship you had with each parent. Yeah, we could start, there's plenty of theories and schools of psychology where they just want to deal with the here and the now. But when you think about it, one form of popular therapy is what? Cognitive behavior therapy. If I can change, if we can work on changing how you think. We can then work on changing, decreasing
how you behave.
Behavior.
Yep.
They go hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other. Then you have behavior therapy where the behaviorist will just focus strictly on the therapy. And there's no knock on anybody that practices that way. But I believe you cannot help a client or help anyone decrease those learned behaviors if you don't even know where it came from.
But here's the thing. That learned behavior may be that child's coping skill.
Right. Talk about defense mechanisms.
And so with that being a coping skill, what is happening that's making the child feel that they need to cope that way. Because that means you still have to address the antecedent. What was the antecedent? What happened first? Because to deal with just the behavior is like, well, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
That part. Right.
You can't do anything with the behavior unless you change the conceptualization behind the behavior.
What is your thought pattern? Why do you think the way you think? Learning those triggers, learning those things. And so I want to get into the intergenerational trauma and how it still impacts the Black community. So it says one major consequence of settler colonizing is the trauma that is passed down from generation to generation. What psychologists label as intergenerational trauma, the American Psychological Association defines this as a phenomenon in which the descendants of a person who has experienced a terrifying event shows adverse emotional and behavior reactions to the event that are similar to those of the person himself or herself. So for Black Americans who descend from enslaved people, the trauma that was experienced by ancestors has been passed down through each generation. There are three important outcomes of intergenerational trauma that deserves further explanation. So the first one that they talk about is self-esteem. In 1940, there was a husband and a wife that was a psychologist, and they did some research. They were the names were Mame and Kenneth Clark, for anyone that wants to do further study. They conducted a study to better understand the impact of segregation on Black children. The results of their study found that a large portion of the Black children shown a preference for white dolls over Black dolls. I'm going to say that again. A large portion of Black children showed a preference of white dolls over Black dolls. The results of this study have been replicated in recent decades. And there's a whole book about it. It's Leary has a book about it where he explains that one of the after effects of slavery that has been observed is the vacant self-esteem that we have as a people, which include feelings of hopelessness and depression, the negative racial stereotype that have been applied to Black people throughout history may have been internalized and passed down from generation to generation.
Absolutely.
For Black youth, especially those from deprived and under-resourced communities, learned helplessness may be another consequence of intergenerational trauma. Learned helplessness is the perception that no matter what a person does, they cannot change their situation or condition. A person who feels learned helplessness, though frustrated, will stop trying to change their circumstance. Hearing stories from ancestors that experienced racism and then having to witness and experience racial threats, racial mega threats like the ones on consistent display in the media, may contribute to feeling of the learned helplessness. Enslavement did not end with the Emancipation Proclamation. The impact on sense of self and self-worth are important to consider. Program developed for the purpose of pouring back into the Black people an imperative to aid in the restoration and reparation process. So let's talk about the self-image, self-esteem. I know growing up, my daddy ain't buy me nothing but Black dolls. He said, and you will not. And you will not. You will not play with the non-melanated dolls. But in so many households, because of what we've been taught and what's been passed down from generation to generation, for some reason, Black kids, Black little girls prefer white dolls because the media has told us that being tall with blonde hair and blue eyes and a small waist that's the standard of beauty. I remember having a client and asking my client, what's your standard of beauty? And she was an African-American young lady. And she gave me all the attributes of a white woman.
Wow.
I'm going to be honest. The level of frustration that I had was like, no, you're the standard of beauty. There's no one set standard of beauty, but that is what's been passed down and taught to us. Is that they are the standard of beauty. And so we lose sight of who we are and what's beautiful to us.
Mm-hmm.
We buy white dolls for our kids. Why? What's wrong with the black dolls? What's wrong with the dolls with the 4C hair? What's wrong with the black dolls with the afro? What's wrong with that?
4C hair.
I'm just saying, what's wrong with that? We got good hair. Because that's a whole other thing when it comes to self-image. Good hair. There's no such thing as good hair. But if I had to pick a race that had good hair, it'd be us. Every day of the week. We can do literally anything with our hair. We can lock it. We can braid it. We can twist it. We can wear it curly. We can wear it straight. We can wear an afro. You ever notice you go on vacation? You go to the countries where there's people that look like us. You see them on the side of the road getting their hair braided because they want to fit into the culture. So when it comes to self-esteem, unfortunately, the media has taught us that the standard of beauty is not a black woman. It is not the nose, the big nose and the full lips. It is not the complexion and your skin. Exactly. Happy to be happy.
And Kardashian out there paying all that money to get her lips to look like this.
Meanwhile, they all trying to look like us. Right? And so, unfortunately, this is something that has been passed down generation to generation. And you can even see it now in some of these African countries where they're bleaching their skin to be lighter. You're bleaching your skin to not look like a black woman because the media and society, and I'm going to blame us as a culture. I'm going to blame us for some of it because, if you light-skinned, then, you bad.
But you got a little bit of them in you.
You bad, right? But the moment you are darker than night, you get teased. Oh, you black, you black, when all shades of brown, no matter how dark it is beautiful. So we have allowed the media, we have allowed the colonizers to tell us what our standard of beauty is. We have allowed them to tell us what we should look like as a culture. So now our self-esteem is so low that we have what is called learned helplessness. That no matter what positive things are going on for us, we still see the glass half empty. We have learned helplessness. Our perception, no matter what positive things are happening, we like, nope, nope, ain't nothing good. That's They have ingrained that in us to think that we are not every shade of beautiful brown. Y'all see all them shades in the background. Y'all see.
But you know that it even goes beyond that. That learned helplessness extends across to it's never going to get better for me, so I just might as well go on welfare like my grandma did.
Right? Go on Section 8.
And go on Section 8.
Let me tell you, I just resigned a couple days ago from the Philadelphia Housing Authority, and I can't tell you how many stories when somebody would get a termination notice, they'd be like, because I ain't never got a termination notice. I've been on this thing for 30, 40 years. Okay. Yep.
You got one there.
Badge of honor. Yep.
Yeah. Because it's not a standard in society for me because of the way society is set up. Unfortunately, our society is set up for us to lose, right?
Every time.
And so we do feel that hopelessness. We do feel that low self-esteem because it's like nothing that I do is good enough to get me where they are. And I think that's why some people try to assimilate to that in hopes that it would bring them closer to the things that are tangible for them. So it doesn't just go with the look self-esteem, it's the mental self-esteem.
It's the mindset of it. Absolutely.
I'm not good enough to get what they get. But
because no matter how much academics we have.
Listen,
No matter what we have, child, we'll get passed over on the job so quickly over somebody that ain't got no experience, no education, but because of the color of our skin, yeah.
let me tell you something. The only reason I look a little light skinned now because I ain't been on nobody's beach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But even with the master's degree,
Mm-hmm.
you still get turned down for some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? I don't need them to tell me what I can and can't have because I'll just make my own.
Listen, I can't sit at your table. I'm going to just go build my own.
I'm going to make my own.
I'm going to go make my own table. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It don't have to be enough room at the table, at your table for me. I'm going to go build my own.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the second thing is health outcomes. So radical battle fatigue is defined as the social phenomenon in which a person who experiences chronic racial discrimination developed by physiological, psychological, and emotional strain due to excessive amounts of energy expended on race-related stressors. The continued and ongoing effects of navigating racist environments can have an impact on a person's health. Racism is associated with many negative health outcomes. One 2010 study found that Black women experience accelerated biological aging due to prolonged stressors. Research indicates that racism is associated with higher stress levels, which can increase the risk of high blood pressure. Hypertension is a condition that afflicts a higher percentage of Black people compared to other racial and ethnic groups. Mm-hmm. Racism could be one of the contributing factors. There are racial differences found in sleep patterns with Black people on average, getting less sleep than their counterparts. Young adults, because there we go, still in survival mode, right?
How many jobs they got?
Survival mode. Young adults between the age of 18 and 28 who experienced discrimination were more likely to experience psychological distress, to be diagnosed with a mental illness, or to report excessive drug use. There is evidence outlining the health implications of racism. To complicate matters, disparities in healthcare access, food deserts, and environmental racism exacerbates these issues even further. Having an understanding of the impact of racism is important to design interventions to mitigate these effects. There should be support systems in place to provide greater access, as well as tools for stress reduction and stress management. So when we talk about being Black in America, right? And we talk about the effects it has on our health. I said this last week on the show, where the moment a cop get behind me, I know I ain't do nothing. I know my registration is good. I know my insurance is paid up, but I instantly start checking my mirror, make sure my seatbelt is on, turn my music down, look in the mirror, all right, he ain't following me. Ain't nothing wrong with you. I got a whole police badge on the back of my daggone car because my brother is a cop. And I still, in the year of 2023, am fearful when a cop gets behind me.
It's all still learned behavior.
Absolutely.
Because the cop is operating off of learned behavior, right? Mm-hmm. But we're also operating off of learned behavior because now we're still in survival mode because we want to get home to our kids and our loved ones. Absolutely. And we know this thing can go left or right in any given moment. Mm-hmm. So it's just like you got insurance, you got a license, and you got registration. But what is he conceptualizing? What is it that he or she is thinking that's going to make them pull me over when I know that I've done nothing wrong?
I've done absolutely nothing.
Standards that are already set in that learned behavior that causes one to react and then the other one to respond.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But then this goes back to what we started talking about, trauma. What traumatic experiences have we experienced? Again, it is a learned behavior, and it's not the easiest thing to get rid of, but it's the reality of it. And it's a reality, unfortunately, for so many people that look like us, because every day we're being re-traumatized by something else. Every day there's a Black man being killed, whether it's from our own hands or from the cops, or them going on camping trips with they all white friends and they the only Black person and they end up dead. It doesn't matter what it is. Every day we are being traumatized by something that the media is telling us. I had to stop following a couple pages on Instagram, like Philly Scoop and No Gun Zone. I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. For my own mental health, I can't do it.
I never did it for that very reason.
I can't do it. I stopped following No Gun Zone. I'm gonna be honest, when the whole George Floyd thing happened, when that situation happened, can I tell y'all, like, I felt depressed. I literally felt myself slipping into a depression, because it was like, I didn't see the video. I didn't see any of that until people just kept talking about it. So I was like, all right, let me go look at the video. I looked at the video, like, why the hell would you do that? Why would you look at this video? And I was like, all right, I got to get off of social media. I gotta take a break. And I took a break for like a couple weeks, and then fast forward, they had the trial. And I remember being at work and listening to CNN as they were reading the verdict, and or about to read the verdict. And I'm saying, all right, I gotta hurry up and get home. And I had a session, I had clients and everything that evening. And I remember sitting at my dining room table and them reading the verdict. And I burst out in tears. Like, I knew that man, because he was one of us. I ain't have to know him. He looked like us. That man was crying out for his mother. And all I could think, as a mother of a son, that could have been any of us. That could have been any of us with our kids. That's somebody's husband, somebody's father, somebody's uncle, somebody's best friend, co-worker. He was somebody. All these Black and brown people that look like us are somebody. Breonna Taylor was somebody.
Ooh,
Sandra Bland.
That one pinched me. Ooh.
Sandra Bland was somebody. Tyree Nichols was somebody. So when we talk about these learned behaviors, yes, they are learned behaviors, but the unfortunate part of it is it's hard to unlearn a behavior when we are consistently being re-traumatized by the thing that probably traumatized us in the first place. I love Law and Order SVU, but sometimes I got to take a break from Captain Benson and Stabler. I got to take a break. It's too much sex crimes for me. I'm going to be honest with you. It's too much sex crimes for me, because personally knowing people that have been unfortunately abused and molested, sometimes it just becomes, some of them stories, I'd be like, oh, Jesus, I know you're just an actor, but if I catch you in these streets, like, it's going to be on and popping. Like, it becomes so much, and the media is pumping that. It's pumping what it is that we see. The human sex trafficking, and all these Black and brown girls that's going missing. Again, we are being re-traumatized. We being re-traumatized every single day. I just read something earlier. My girlfriend sent it to me on Instagram about these hotels.
The one on City Line Avenue.
Yeah, these hotels that be into on this sex trafficking stuff. Yeah, these hotels that's ran by these people. Yeah.
Did you know that the center point is the King of Prussia Mall?
Really? I did not know that. And on the thing they even said, like, if you have a family member that's missing or something, go check these hotels. You know, the first place we go check is the morgue. We start calling around hospitals, the morgue. Go check these hotels. Us as Black and brown women, girls, are being snatched at an all-time high. But that ain't making the news. We're not talking about that. But again, we are being re-traumatized daily. And so when we're trying to unlearn these behaviors, it's hard, but it's possible. Because again, cognitive behavior therapy is how you think, therefore that's how you behave. So we can get to how you're thinking, then we can get to the behavior of it.
But let's go back a little bit further. About you said about we don't hear about these girls that are being taken. But let's talk about the position or the very predicament that some of those young ladies may have put themselves in as a result of trauma that they
Mm-hmm.
went through, being impulsive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being in survival mode, thinking that they had to do certain things when they essentially put themselves right in the middle of harm's way to
Mm-hmm.
be taken. Now, I know that may not be the case for all of them. Some of them
Absolutely.
legitimately could have been taken off the street on their way to school. But
Mm-hmm.
some of those women made
Unfortunately.
choices that they thought was going to cause them to survive when it
Mm-hmm.
actually put them in a situation that cost them their
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Trauma.
Trauma. Because the reality of it is, being sexually abused is going to do one of three things.
Come on.
You're going to be resilient and push past that trauma. Right, right, right.
Here I go.
Hand both of them. Let's raise both of these hands.
Here I go.
You're going to be resilient, or you're going to have risque behavior, right? Or unfortunately, you are going to become the predator. So only three things that's going to happen. You're going to be resilient and work on that and get past that, or you're going to do risque things like, unfortunately, becoming a prostitute, becoming a sex worker, working in brothels, unfortunately, putting yourself in these kind of situations because you were traumatized. Unfortunately, as a child, you was touched by that close family member, that boyfriend that your mama had, and she ain't believe you, or that boyfriend was more important than you were, or you're going to become the predator and you're going to do to somebody what was done to you.
What was done to you.
And it's unfortunate. Good job, Mimi. I'm so glad to hear that. That's a survival story.
What did she say?
She said she was risque, but then became resilient.
And I think that is exactly the process in which it goes.
Absolutely.
Because
Don't just get resilient.
when you come into that risque behavior, right? We all did it. We were promiscuous, right?
Mm-hmm.
But once we gained a better understanding of where that promiscuity would then send us, we started to do some type of work that then made us become resilient. You don't just become resilient. Of course, you do the risque, but when you get tired of knocking your head up against that wall,
right?
You like, all right, I got to straighten up. Something got to give. Something got to change. Because
when you hit your rock bottom, not nobody else's rock bottom. When you hit your rock bottom, it wasn't for you. Absolutely,
it wasn't for exactly.
And it's unfortunate that trauma has such a chokehold on us as the Black community. It's unfortunate that, when we talk about redlining, right? Because I said I wanted to bring that up. When we talk about redlining and being put in certain situations, being put in communities where they strip us of resources, looking at the schools that our kids unfortunately have to go to. The fact that they can put Chinese stores and bodegas in our neighborhood and we ain't saying nothing. But again, we are always in survival mode. We do what we need to do to survive. We ain't create the drugs. The drugs is placed in our community. We ain't put the guns in the neighborhoods. They put the guns in the neighborhood. Wasn't it a story not too long ago where it was one of these sheriff deputies, the black cop? He was the one that had put the guns with that Roxborough shooting at the school. Like, y'all thought Snowfall was just a show. Oh, okay. No, Snowfall wasn't just a show. That was the reality of what it was like to grow up in the 80s.
But we understand that the government stands to win whichever way society turns. They will never defund the NRA.
Absolutely not. You gonna take their rights away?
Please. No. It's not even so much take their rights away. You gonna take their money away?
That part, because it's all capitalism. It's all about the money.
And so they're the ones that are putting the guns out on our streets. But so here's the thing about African American people for me. they are so ingenious and so crafty.
Mm-hmm.
They will find a way,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's not right, to make it work for them and capitalize off of it.
Mm-hmm.
So even though the government legitimately puts guns and stuff out on the streets, and where some of our black and brown men can't get to those legally, they
Mm-hmm.
still find a way
Mm-hmm.
to gain access to it. But guess who ain't stopping it?
Hmm.
Guess who ain't stopping it? Because they're dependent on the underground
Mm-hmm.
and the railroad.
Mm-hmm. I guarantee you, if we look
They
up the
can get
statistics of
the
straw purchases,
NRA is going to get paid whichever way the gun get purchased.
whatever way it come, they gonna get their coins. Meanwhile, we out here with a genocide. Meanwhile, we out here with a genocide, killing each other.
Trauma invoked.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma is pulling the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real statement.
Yeah.
That's
Trauma
a real
definitely is pulling the trigger.
That is a real statement, because even in those moments where those individuals don't have the social emotional skills that they need to either self-regulate or fix the problem on their own, the fight flight comes in. That's what makes them pull that trigger.
Survival is always going to kick in.
That's what makes them pull that trigger, because they don't have those social emotional skills to say, hey, you know what? Back in the day, we used to fight, and the next day we was outside playing with each other. But there is no fight anymore. It goes straight to gunplay. Because they don't have the capabilities or the wherewithal to understand there's a better way to handle this, and that response is not warranted. They just don't have it.
Absolutely. Trauma, right? Meek Mills has a song called Trauma. It's probably one of my favorite songs that he has. It's probably some of the realest shit Meek has ever rapped about and said. But, we got to do better. We going to do better. I'm going to keep bringing y'all people that look like us to teach y'all what it is that we need to know. It don't stop here. It ain't going to just be a Black History Month thing. It's going to be a thing. We going to get it together. And so, Dana, I thank you for taking time out. I'm sorry you had to miss your class. But thank you for joining.
It's fine. It's fine. I just want the people to get the help.
Absolutely.
And when I say get the help, the very thing that came to your mind that you said you don't want to deal with right now, that's what I want you to deal with. Because you know what you need to deal with. When you deal with that, it'll stop dealing with you. Your life will get easier. Decisions will get easier. And sometimes we can't always blame other people. We have to do that self-introspection and take inventory of the part that we played, the accountability. Because had we done our work, some of the responses that other people got, they would not have gotten. And so therefore, then you would not have had to retaliate against them for what they did to you, because you did something to them. It starts with one person. We can heal the world, but we can only do it one mind at a time. Somebody has to start the work. And that thing that you keep putting off, keep burying, that's the thing you need to deal with, because it's affecting your children. It's affecting your grandchildren. It's affecting the generations that'll come after you. So the Bible says greater works will they do, right? Our children are supposed to do greater than us. But if our children are just as traumatized as us, how much greatness is going to come forth?
That part. Because we take learned behaviors and we just teaching them generation after generation.
Somebody gotta be the generational curse breaker.
When we talk about that, yeah, breaking those generational curses, this is what we mean.
That's it. So I thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
And I wish you well. Congratulations, my dear friend. We must do Jamaica again.
Absolutely. You know, that's like our favorite place. But please come back. Absolutely. You are a wealth of knowledge.
Please invite me back.
Listen, this is your permanent invitation. You can come back anytime you want so we can get the people what it is they need. But I appreciate you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely. You as well.
I appreciate you. Any final words for the people?
No, that was it.
That was okay.
Get you at the app. So when I was at Gaudenzia, doing drug and alcohol, I would always say it's two things in life that you need. There's God and a therapist. God is going to guide you to the things that you need to do, but your therapist is going to help you find your way to that road and make the right choices to get to where God is trying to take you. Two things in life you need, God and a therapist, and you'll never go wrong. All those things you dreamt about that people told you that you would do in your life, if you get God and a therapist, you're going to obtain them. I promise you.
I like that. I think that is some great advice for the people. Again, Dana, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Try to enjoy the rest of your night.
Good night.
Good night. So, guys, that's that. That is the show. Thank you for joining us. As we talked about trauma, talked about how it affected, how it affects children, how it affected us as children, and how we grew up, our trauma responses, talking about trauma and brain development, and understanding that, yes, while a lot of this may be learned behavior, we do not have to stay here. It does not have to be how we continue to live our life. Say it out loud, talk about it, find you a therapist or find you someone that you trust, that you hold near and dear to you, that will hold your secrets. Somebody that you know will give you sound suggestions, not advice. I always tell my clients, I don't give advice, I give suggestions, because at the end of the day, this is your life. You have to live this life. And so what you do with the 24 hours that you are given is up to you. I love you guys. I appreciate you so much for joining Melanated Vibrations, the second episode. I'll see you guys next week. Have a good night.
Hey, good people. Welcome to Melanated Vibrations, a new show that celebrates the diversity and richness of Black culture. Join us as we delve into our individual mental health and overall mental health of our community. From the latest trends to the timeless coping mechanisms, we'll showcase the best of what it means to be mentally healthy. So sit back, relax, and get ready to feel the vibrations of Black excellence.